Chaudhary Charan Singh's birth anniversary. He's a former Prime Minister of India. He is the only farmer to have ever become the Prime Minister, reached the highest post. But I am highly suspicious of that man. He was a landlord from West UP. एक बड़े ज़मींदार थे, शुगर केन की फार्मिंग थी उनकी. As a typical upper caste Jat ज़मींदार, he used to oppress agriculture workers in his fields. तो देखा जाए, as intellectuals who are studying in university, from the get-go, he is not someone who should be celebrated. So then why Kisan Divas on his name? And why should we, as people who, I hope that we have a progressive agenda, why are we celebrating him, or why are we celebrating the day Kisan Divas, which is the anniversary of Chaudhary Charan Singh? If the movement had not happened, if the farmers' movement had not happened, there would be no reason. There would be no reason to support such a man or even celebrate something which is nearby his name or his legacy. तो ऐसा क्या हुआ है किसान आंदोलन में जिससे एकदम से हमारा जो नज़रिया है किसी भी आंदोलन को देखने का वो बदला है. आई थिंक वो नज़रिया सबसे पहले सीए से ही शुरू हुआ था बदलना, जब काफ़ी सारे डेमोक्रेटिक फोर्सेस अलग अलग आइडेंटिटी से, अलग अलग पॉलिटिकल बैकग्राउंड से एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे आए कि हमें कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डिफेंड करना है. वन कॉमन प्लेटफॉर्म वेयर वी हैव वन इशू एंड वी डिफेंड इट till the end, till the logical end. But as Comrade said, CA movement did not proceed, did not succeed. And usually when you have an economic fight, आप बहुत narrow fight के लेते हैं. If you, for example, if you look at industrial workers are demanding minimum wages of say 26,000 rupees a month. They're demanding कि public जो PDS system है, food delivery का, उसको और cheapen या फिर fully subsidized होना चाहिए, etc. So this is a demand for one particular section of people. Often ये होता है कि जो workers मांगते हैं उससे सिर्फ industrialist को problem नहीं होता है, even middle class has a problem for various reasons. So usually what we have seen, and of course it's the good fight. If worker is demanding minimum wages, they are correct in demanding that. If somebody has an issue, then there is a class conflict. Then if there are so many class conflicts in society, इतना वर्गीय संघर्ष है अलग अलग पोलराइजिंग क्लासेस के बीच में, तो फिर इतनी यूनिटी में इतना दबाव क्यों दिया जा रहा है? आई थिंक किसान आंदोलन ने इस चीज़ को हमें समझाया, उन ग्रुप्स को भी समझाया जो इस बात को समझने को राजी नहीं थे. When the movement started, the organization that I belong to, All India Kisan Sabha, it had for many years been saying that even though our interests means small and marginal farmers' interests, they stand opposed to the interests of say middle farmers, not even middle farmers, big farmers. Big farmers in India is basically 20 acres or more. And landlords, even though technically there shouldn't be any landlord according to land ceiling laws, there continue to be many land ceiling laws. Punjab mein Prakash Badal is known to own thousands of acres of land, even though the upper ceiling is at 30 acres. But our program has always said that even though small farmers and large farmers are opposed in interests, there needs to be some kind of a unity when a policy level change is being demanded. What is a policy level change? हम लोगों ने शायद बहुत बार MSP बार सुना होगा in the course of the struggle. We want MSP, we want a minimum price for our crop. Now, minimum price, who needs? The big landlord of course needs. This means they make a great profit. But the small farmer also needs minimum price. And why the small farmer needs minimum price? For that, I will try to quote some data. ये जो नंबर्स है मेरे पास, मैं इन नंबर्स को फेंकना नहीं चाहता क्योंकि हमें बहुत नंबर्स मिलते हैं. पेपर खोलते हैं, हमें एक नया नंबर मिलता है रोज़ कि इतने लोग मर गए, आज इतने लोगों ने सुसाइड कर लिया, कोविड में इतने लोग ख़त्म हो गए. तो आई डोंट वांट इट टू बी जस्ट अनदर नंबर टू यू. So this is the audience. The audience has to be sensitive to the data rather than me trying to tell you that the data is important. The audience needs to understand that data is about real people. Because even though जब हम स्कूल में पढ़ते थे कि India lives in the villages, this might not be exactly true today, but it's still true that India goes back home to its villages. COVID pandemic में जो भी किसान, जो भी मजदूर यहाँ था, शहरों में था, Tier 1 सिटी में काम कर रहा था, दिल्ली में काम कर रहा था, we all remember in visuals from Anand Vihar ISBT कैसे लोग बसें भर भर के चल के जा रहे थे अपने गाँव की तरफ. So if India doesn't always live in its villages, India goes back to its villages, and this is still true for our time. So let me give you some numbers. Firstly, कोई मुझे बताएगा कि अभी दिहाड़ी मजदूरी कितनी मिलती है? डेली वेज एवरेज दिल्ली में कितनी होगी अभी?
300 प्लस.
लोअर लिमिट 300 ले लेते हैं, बट थोड़ा सा भी अगर आप स्किल्ड हो तो 600, 500, 600 भी उसको एक्सपेक्ट करना गलत नहीं होगा. फॉर एन एवरेज फार्मर इन इंडिया, एन एवरेज बाय एवरेज फार्मर आई मीन इंडियाज मोस्ट फार्मर्स ऑफ इंडिया आर स्मॉल एंड मार्जिनल फार्मर. स्मॉल मार्जिन मतलब 2 acres or less. 2 acres or less is small and marginal farmer, because that's the number of farmers that are in India is so much and the land is so less that small farmer is 2 acres or less. A small farmer in America would be 60 acres or more, between 60 acres and 100 acres. Land इतना ज़्यादा किसान ही नहीं बच रहा, so that's their own history. So in India the average farmer's daily income, you said 300 is the industrial workers wage. The average farmer's daily income is rupees 27 a day, which means it comes to 816 rupees a month. 816 rupees a month, which means in all of this 816 रुपये में आपको प्रोड्यूस भी करना है, मतलब इनपुट्स खरीदने हैं, बीज खरीदना है, फर्टिलाइज़र खरीदने हैं, केमिकल खरीदने हैं, क्लाइमेट चेंज हो रहा है तो आपको 10 चीज़ें करनी है उसके लिए. उन्हीं पैसों से आपको अपने बच्चों को स्कूल भेजना है, उनका हेल्थ केयर देखना है. अगर कोई घर में कुछ कैलामिटी आती है, then you have to take care of that in 816 rupees a month. So already we know that if you don't get good prices, you are doomed, and that's what's happening. Most farmers in India are doomed. They are going towards almost certain death. Some farmers are choosing death. Now, who is choosing death? Between 1995 and 2014, so before NDA 2 came to power, about 3 lakh farmers and farm workers have died by suicide. 3 lakh farmers and farm workers. And this is not data that some journalistic website is saying to make a headline. No, this is NCRB data. This is government data which says 3 lakh farmers and farm workers killed themselves because they had no income, they could not support their families, and all kinds of mental problems that are an outcome of not having enough money. They killed them. This is more than the people who actually had clinical mental health issues who killed themselves. NCRB's data में पिछले 30 साल से farmers are topping the list in terms of who is dying by suicide the most. And under Modi's regime, that is between 2014 and 21, 89,000 farmers and farm workers have died. So the rate has also increased in the last 6 years. You must have heard some years ago in Maharashtra, Beed and Nashik district, suicides were happening like anything. Farmers were dropping like flies because they had absolutely no support. Government had completely forgotten about it. So when we talk about MSP, it's not a matter of कि अरे बड़े किसान को तो बहुत profit मिलेगा, आप MSP क्यों डिमांड कर रहे हैं? It's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of life and death for most farmers of India. We should always realize and remind ourselves कि बड़ा किसान देश में अभी भी एक minority है, 5%, 10%. This is all NSSO data. NSSO data proves us कि maximum farmers are marginal or they don't have any land anymore. They are share बटाईदार है वो, शायद share cropping में they are taking in land. And this data is most probably wrong. It's most probably undercounting the deaths. For example, COVID में government gave some data. Some months later, I think it was New York Times or some other foreign journalist media group which said that the death toll in India is probably 10 times the actual death toll of pandemic. Similarly, I'll just give you an example of farm suicide ka under calculation. Between 2000 and 2018, in 18 years, in Punjab there are 6 districts which are heavily like suicide prone by farmers. Now, according to NCRB, which is the crime bureau, crime records bureau, they say every year in each district 200 farmers died by suicide. Every district 200. But an RTI by some well-meaning activist finds that in these 18 years, in all of these districts, each district was seeing 900 deaths every year. Similarly, इस साल 2021 में Pashchim Mednipur is a district in Bengal, West Bengal. According to NCRB and according to Mamata government, absolutely no one died of suicide in West Bengal. But 122 farmers died by suicide within Pashchim Mednipur itself. This is again an RTI. And this is RTI that the government is responding to. Which means all these deaths, 89,000 is definitely an undercount number. This means we are crossing a lakh. Worst case, हम 2 लाख की भी आगे निकल गए हैं. But क्या फर्क पड़ता है? 90,000 हो, 2 लाख हो. We have become so dehumanized to numbers, to statistics, that none of it matters. So the NCRP can give you any bullshit and you'll buy it. Because what does it matter to you, right? So in this situation, let us think of once again why MSP is needed. But before that, let's try to talk about the big brother here. The big brother has always been since independence, since the end of Second World War. It's been the United States of America. United States of America ने एक बड़ा institution बनाया, WTO, World Trade Organization. उन्होंने एक और institution बनाया, IMF, International Monetary Fund. With all these organizations, it puts policies on third world countries. जो भी developing country है, आपको हमारी policy मांगनी पड़ेगी. We need full access to your markets. Although you will not have access to any of our markets, we need full access to your markets. Also, we will support our farmers, but somehow you can't. WTO में literally एक ऐसा clause है जिसमें लिखा है कि United States and all the Western European countries can support their farmers in a much higher way than Indian government can support its own farmers. For example, a US farmer every year gets $61,286 of subsidized support. This means कि irrigation support, seed support, agricultural sciences support, veterinary support, prices support, $61,000 a year. How much does the Indian farmer get? He gets $282 a year. That's the upper limit. If the government goes beyond that, the WTO will cut your neck. It will go after you. So, the US farmer can have all the wealth in the world through government. Somehow, our Indian farmers, which are much more, possibly Indian farmer, the total population of Indian farmers is more than the total population of US itself. But somehow, Indian farmers are only deserving of $282 of support. This means that in India, over the last 30 years in the liberalization, in the post-1991 era, public spending in agriculture has massively dropped. आप दिल्ली में ही जाएंगे, दिल्ली में एक एरिया है पूसा इंस्टीट्यूट करके, इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट. It was made, of course, by the British back then, but the Nehruvian government took it up with a lot of energy, a lot of vitality, saying that we need to give hybrid seeds to farmers, crops which will produce their own seeds, and then the farmer does not have to buy new seeds anymore. आज क्या होता है? आज एक बहुत बड़ी कंपनी है, BlackRock है उसका नाम. BlackRock owns all the seed companies all over the world, and it produces a kind of plant which does not produce seeds. So every time the crop is harvested, the farmer has to go to the BlackRock retail store and purchase another really expensive bag of seed, and this goes on year after year. Whereas Green Revolution was basically about a crop, wheat crop and rice variety, in which the crop itself is producing seeds. So you no longer have to buy it again. तभी तो इंडिया फूड सरप्लस कंट्री बना है, क्योंकि आपने फार्मर्स को उनसे एक इनपुट कॉस्ट उनसे जो रहता वो आपने उनसे उनका कम कर दिया. ऑफ कोर्स these are all pre-1991 thinking of governments. You are all students of various disciplines. I'm sure you know what happened in 1991. What happened not just in 1991 in India, but what happened across the world. The global reversal of socialism meant that imperialist forces ensured that third world को अपना market हर जगह खोलना पड़ेगा. उनका cheap labor को exploit किया जाएगा, हजारों चीजें. And of course, the outcome for farmers is that from 11%, which is a very low number itself, 11% of GDP in 2010, it's been rapidly falling. Right now in 2020, it was 9.5% of GDP. That's the amount of money spent on agriculture. ये भी WTO को पसंद नहीं है. They're constantly behind us. Every time they're saying कि नहीं आप ये नहीं कर सकते, बहुत ज़्यादा है. It's only because the farmers of India are so politically conscious that no government can go against them without losing their seat. If the government today says that we are going to tax agriculture, since independence everyone has been taxed except farmers. It's because they've been so politically conscious about their own place in society. Because they know they're creating food. So they live with that honor. So what point I began is that farmers still go home. Most people of India go home to villages. 2017 में 45% of India was dependent on agriculture. In 2020, the number has increased to 45.6%. This means that number is not decreasing, even though the contribution of agriculture to GDP is reducing. But the number of people dependent on agriculture is increasing. After the pandemic, it must have increased manifold. Manifold. So this brings us to the question, why do we celebrate a day which is about a landlord, a patriarch, I'm sure a big casteist person who made life hell for a lot of people. It's not because of all these things which were bad about him. It's because there are also certain positive aspects of this person. Now, who is Chaudhry Charan Singh? Chaudhry Charan Singh is the founder. He was before his eventually made his own party. आज जिसका नाम Lokdal hai. He started that, and he was earlier the finance minister, then the prime minister. Now we are all kinds of it. We are all intellectuals here. I'm sure we are all studying in a university. This means that everyone is an intellectual. There is no ये शब्द in itself गलत नहीं है to call oneself intellectual. Of course, if you're studying, if you're putting in effort, if you're putting in labor, it is okay to be an intellectual. But there are other kinds of intellectual. If anyone has read Gramsci here, Gramsci talks about a certain kind of individual called an organic intellectual. An organic intellectual who is someone who is not given the abstract thought first. So when we read the book, whatever book you are studying, if somebody is doing pol science, we're reading a political science book. If somebody is reading history, वो एक history किताब है. And the concept has been given to you first. And then if you are interested, आप field में जाते हैं. और फील्ड वर्क का एक हवा बना ही हुआ है कि अरे तुम फील्ड वर्क में गए, बहुत अच्छी बात है, तुमने फील्ड को देखा है. फॉर अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल इन इंडिया द रिवर्स हैपेंस. यू सी द फील्ड फर्स्ट एंड देन यू एब्स्ट्रैक्ट, देन यू मेक अ कॉन्सेप्ट आउट ऑफ इट. चौधरी चरण सिंह, being a farmer, being brought up in the rural areas, saw the life of farmers, and he conceptualized out of his real life experiences. And he was also someone who very long ago, of course, my organization has been saying this since 1936, but even Chaudhry Charan Singh, because he was a prime minister, he brought the issue of MSP to the frontal level, to right into the corridors of power. He said farmers need support prices. So farmers need support prices is something that I'm sure we all agree by now, I hope by the data that I've given, that farmers need support prices. So if the man who conceptualized this thing he also said farmers need MSP, then in a nuanced way, सोच समझ के हम ये कह सकते हैं कि चौधरी चरण सिंह कुछ चीज़ों में सही थे और उन्होंने जो कहा था आज उसको पूरा करने की बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है. That is why the movement, even though the movement was fighting against 3 farm laws itself, they are complicated, but the agenda is the same. You give up you push the farmers out of the means of production, you push the farmers out of the land, you give it to the industrialists. This is what has happened in most of Europe. If you go to Belgium, although it's a small country, there are 20,000 farmers. इतना भी छोटा देश नहीं कि सिर्फ 20,000 किसान ही होने चाहिए. Because all the lands have been bought up by a big industrialist. Some automobile manufacturer owns half of Belgium's agricultural lands and he's growing crops there. For a country like India, which is so much dependent on agriculture, to even think of a time where Adani, Ambani, some other big Mahindra, someone owns vast swaths of land is a troubling thought, which means that either they are employed elsewhere, either they are all employed in cities, but employment rate कहाँ जा रहा है? आप CMI की reports पढ़ेंगे, employment rate is plunging like suddenly on earth gravity has increased 10 times. It's going down like that. There is barely any employment. So where will farmers go? So are you saying that you want to kill 100 million people? Is that what the final thought is? It could be. They really don't care. This regime has absolutely no sympathies for the actual people of the country. They have sympathies for people who let them be in power, who constantly give them capital to be in power. So when these farm laws came, the agenda was same, take the land away from these people. Now farmers, one thing everyone should appreciate, this is something that even workers don't have. And of course workers are the revolutionary class, but they even they have one lacking, because they have been uprooted so much. They don't have a sentiment to where they exist currently. They have no sentimental attachment to where they are, which is in a way that makes them free also. But farmers, because they are so sentimentally attached to their land, the first thing that was said in Punjab's villages when I was going to the Singhu border, often it would be heard, a lot of farmers would say, कि हमारी नस्ल खत्म हो जाएगी. Our race will end because once we lose the land, our species will no longer exist. Once the land is gone, we are basically like anyone else, floating around like a migrant, have no home to go to. We will be like that person. And that will be the end of our lineage. So that sentiment, now that, of course, there is a role of ideology. There is a role of how Bhagat Singh's imagery, how Sohan Singh Bhakna's imagery, all these imageries were used, all the revolutionary imageries were used. And they were very important at a later stage. But what really hurt and hurt the farmers was this realization that we are going to lose our lands. And Bada Kisan might lose 20 acres. He'll be like, "Theek hai, I have businesses in the city, I'll somehow manage." But the marginal farmer who has 2 acres of land has really nowhere to go. They have no industries, they have no sugar mills, they have no aata chakki. Unki zameen gayi, it's over for them. It's really over for them. They probably aren't able to send their children to Canada also, like a lot of big farmers do in Punjab. So the question of these farm laws brought everyone out. Now everyone comes out. Small farmers come out, middle farmers come out, landlords also come out.